Thunderstorms have a way of making normal sounds feel wrong. A knock at the door, a branch against a window, a car slowing down outside your house. But in these three stories, the people involved realized too late that the storm was not what they needed to be afraid of. The rain was just cover. And by the time they understood that, the storm had already hidden too much. Mara had been through worse storms than this one. She grew up in a house that sat at the edge of a tree line in central Pennsylvania. And by the time she was in her late 20s and living alone in a similar kind of house, storms were just background noise. She knew the sounds. Rain on the roof sounds like static. Wind through old siding sounds like someone exhaling. Thunder at close range shakes the glass in the frames. She knew all of it. That was part of why she ignored the first sound. It was a Wednesday night in late September. Her boyfriend was 2 states away for work. She had the heat on low, a blanket on the couch, and a show she had already seen twice playing on her laptop. The storm had been building since around 7. By 9, it was full. The first sound came just after 9:30. She heard what she described as a hollow knock, not sharp, not loud, coming from somewhere near the back of the house. She turned the volume down, waited. Thunder rolled through a few seconds later, and she told herself the knock had just been a branch. There was a big oak behind the back fence. It had hit the siding before. She turned the volume back up. Remember that detail about the oak tree. It matters later. The second sound came about 15 minutes after that. This time it was different. It was not a knock. It was more like pressure, like something leaning against the side door. The door off the kitchen that opened onto a small concrete step and then the backyard. Mara paused the show. She sat still for a moment and listened. Rain, thunder in the distance, the hiss of the gutters overflowing. Nothing else. She went to the kitchen and stood at the counter, looking at the side door. The light above the step outside was still on. She could see rain coming down hard through the small window in the door. She could not see anything else. She went back to the couch. That was the first mistake. About 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from her security camera app. The camera covered the front porch. The alert said motion detected. She opened the app. The feed was blurry, rain on the lens, but she could make out the front porch clearly enough. Nothing there. She assumed it was the wind triggering the sensor and put the phone face down. Then the power went out. The whole house dropped dark at once. No flicker, just off. Mara sat still in the dark for a few seconds before reaching for her phone flashlight. The storm outside was loud now, close, the thunder overlapping itself. She went to the circuit breaker in the hallway and checked it. Nothing had tripped. The outage was from the grid. She texted her boyfriend, then her neighbor 2 houses down. Neighbor replied quickly, said the whole block was dark. She went back to the couch with her phone. Before I continue, think about what you would have done at this point. Most people would have done exactly what she did. The camera notification came again. Motion. Front porch. She opened the app again. The feed was still running on a battery backup. Still nothing on the porch. She stared at the feed for a long moment. Then a flash of lightning lit the back of the house through the kitchen window, and in that half-second of white light, she saw a shape near the side door. Not a branch. Not a trash can. A person standing close to the wall, partially under the overhang. She did not move. She sat in the dark, phone in hand, and did not breathe. The thunder hit 3 seconds later, hard enough to rattle the door. She called 911. The dispatcher was calm, said units were responding to multiple calls across the area due to the storm. Gave her an estimated arrival of 20 to 30 minutes. Told her to stay away from exterior doors and stay on the line if she felt immediate danger. She stayed on the line. She sat in the kitchen with her back to the counter facing the side door, flashlight off, listening. For 12 minutes, nothing happened. The rain started to ease slightly. She could hear more clearly now, and she heard nothing outside the side door. The dispatcher asked if she was still hearing anything. She said no. The dispatcher said units would still come by to check. Mara said she was going to check the back herself, and the dispatcher told her firmly not to. She didn't. The officers arrived 22 minutes after her call. They walked the perimeter with flashlights. One of them knocked on her side door from outside and told her it was clear. She unlocked it and stepped out. The officer pointed his flashlight at the ground beside the step. The mud beside the concrete was soft from the rain. There were 2 footprints pressed deep into it. Facing the door, the officer noted them, took a photo, and told her that whoever it was had likely moved when they heard the cruiser pull in. They checked the backyard, the fence line, the alley beyond it. Nothing. Mara asked about the oak tree. The officer shone his light on it. The lowest branch was at least 9 feet off the ground. It had not been hitting the siding. She does not leave the house unlocked during storms anymore. And the hollow knock she heard that first time, she has heard it described the same way by other people. It is the sound of someone testing a door latch, gently, to see if it moves. Inside a house, a storm narrows your world. You hear things you cannot see, and you second-guess every one of them. But at least you have walls. On the road, a storm takes something else away entirely. It takes away your exits. And if the wrong person realizes you have none, that is a different kind of fear. Daniel was driving home from his sister's place, about 60 miles on mostly 2-lane highway, and he had waited too long to leave. He knew that before he even got in the car. The storm had been on the forecast for 2 days. His sister had offered the guest room. He had told her he needed to be back for work in the morning, and that the storm would probably miss the worst of it by the time he left. It did not miss anything. By the time he got on the highway, the rain was heavy enough that his wipers at full speed were barely keeping up. He had his headlights on, both hands on the wheel, doing 50 where the limit was 65. Visibility was about 40 feet. He was roughly 30 miles from home when he noticed the headlights behind him. Close headlights, high beams. He had not noticed a car pulling onto the highway behind him. They were just there, about 2 car lengths back, high beams filling his mirrors. He tilted the rear view to cut the glare. He slowed slightly. Usually if someone is tailgating in rain, they pass. This car did not pass. He sped up to 60. The car matched him. He slowed back to 50. The car slowed too. That was when the situation changed. Daniel told himself it was probably just a bad driver. Someone following his taillights because visibility was that poor. He had heard of people doing that, using the car ahead as a guide. It felt reasonable. It stopped feeling reasonable about 5 miles later. He passed the junction where he usually turned off for a gas station. Thought about pulling in. Decided not to because the exit was tight, and in this rain he didn't want to brake hard and risk sliding. He kept going. The high beams kept following. Then the emergency alert hit his phone. A flash flood warning for the county he was entering. The automated voice through his car speakers said roads near creek crossings were at risk. He knew one of those crossings. It was about 8 miles ahead, a low bridge over a creek that sat maybe 4 feet above the waterline on a dry day. He decided to take the county road bypass. It added 12 minutes but stayed on higher ground. He took the turn. The high beams followed him onto the county road. This road was darker. No highway lights. Narrow. Trees on both sides pressing close. The rain was lighter here, but the wind was stronger, and branches were moving across the road every quarter mile or so. 3 miles in, he came around a curve and had to stop. A tree had come down across the road. Full trunk, not a branch. It was not going anywhere. He stopped the car. In his mirrors, the high beam stopped about 40 yards behind him. Daniel sat very still. The car behind him did not move. No door opened. No hazards came on. No reverse lights. Just sitting. He called his sister. No signal. He tried his wife. 1 bar. The call connected and dropped before she said anything. He put the car in reverse and looked back. The other car had not moved, but it was sitting in the middle of the narrow road. There was not enough room to reverse past it. He tried to think clearly. He had a flashlight in the glove box. He had about a third of a tank. He could stay in the car, locked, with the engine running. He could try to back up and signal the other driver to move. He chose to flash his own high beams twice. The other car did not respond. He laid on the horn once. The other car's door opened. The dome light came on briefly and he saw, or thought he saw, a single figure get out. Then the dome light went off. He could not see the person with the high beam still pointed at him. He locked his doors and picked up his phone. One bar came and went. He managed to dial 911. The call stayed connected for 40 seconds before dropping. Long enough to give his name, say he was on County Road 9 near the downed tree, and say there was another driver acting strangely behind him. The dispatcher had asked him to repeat his location when the call dropped. He sat in the car with the engine running. Nothing happened for 4 minutes. The rain picked up again. He watched his mirrors. He could not see the figure, just the high beams. Then, without warning, the car behind him reversed. Slowly at first, then faster. It reversed until it reached a pull-off he had not noticed, turned around and drove back the way it came. Gone. Daniel sat in the car for another 10 minutes before a county sheriff's unit found him. They had gotten enough of his call to send someone toward the area. The deputy checked the road, confirmed the tree was impassable, and escorted Daniel back to the highway the way he came. Daniel told him about the car. The deputy took a description, said there had been reports of someone driving erratically on that stretch of highway earlier in the evening. Then he pointed his light at the pull-off where the car had turned around. The gravel there was fresh, no weeds growing through it, no debris. The deputy said the pull-off had not been there the last time he'd driven that road. Someone had recently cleared it, which meant the roadblock may not have been the accident. Daniel does not drive alone in heavy rain anymore. And when he thinks about the high beam sitting behind him in the dark while he could not move and could not call anyone, the detail that stays with him is not the figure who got out of the car. It is the pull-off. Because if the driver just wanted to turn around, they could have done it at any point on that highway. They waited until Daniel had no exit. The second story is terrifying because the storm trapped him with no way out and no way to call for help. But the last story is in a different category. Because in that one, the storm did not just create a bad situation. Someone had been watching the forecast. Someone had made a plan around it. And that is a much colder kind of fear. If you are still listening at this point, you already know why storm stories hit differently than other horror. Subscribe to Nightfall Narratives for more like this. Claire lived alone in a rental house in a small town in rural Tennessee, and she was the kind of person who had done everything right. She had a Ring doorbell. She had a motion sensor light above the back door. She had good locks. She had a chain on the front door. She had her neighbor's number saved and her local police non-emergency line memorized. She had done everything right. And she would later tell the detective that the most disturbing part was not what happened during the storm. It was realizing how long it had been happening before the storm. It started in the summer, 3 months before the night in question. Small things. A planter on her back step moved slightly. She assumed wind. Her motion sensor light triggered at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. She assumed an animal. A hanging basket on her porch disappeared. She assumed it blew off in a light rain. She bought another one. A screenshot of her Ring camera showed a shape near her back gate one night. Not quite at the gate, not quite on the street. She reported it to the non-emergency line. An officer came by, saw nothing, said it might have been a neighbor cutting through. She did not feel right about any of these things, but she could not explain why exactly until October. The storm system that hit that Tuesday evening in mid-October was a slow-moving one. Heavy rain for 6 hours, lightning, sustained winds around 30 miles an hour. The forecast had been posted for 4 days. Claire got home from work at 6, watched the alerts come in and settled in. She checked her camera feeds. Front door, back door, both fine. She made dinner. Watched the storm build outside. Lost power at 8:15 when a line somewhere down the road blew. Her cameras had battery backup on the doorbell unit, but the back door camera ran off the house system. When the power went, that camera went offline. That detail mattered. She did not know that at the time. She ate by candle, charged her phone from a portable battery, and texted her neighbor to see if they had power. They didn't. She went to bed around 10, left a candle on the bathroom counter and listened to the rain. She woke up at 12:40. She was not sure what had woken her. She lay still and listened. Rain on the roof. Wind. Thunder somewhere to the east moving away. Then she heard it. A sound from downstairs. Not a knock. Not a creak from settling wood. A deliberate sound. The specific sound of a cabinet door being closed softly. She did not move. She lay in bed with her phone in her hand and thought about what she knew. Back door was locked. Front was locked and chained. Windows. She went through them in her head. The kitchen window above the sink had a latch that she had been meaning to replace for 2 months. It locked, but the frame had swollen, and if the latch was not pressed firmly down, it did not fully catch. She dialed 911 from under the covers. She whispered her address. She said she had heard a sound from downstairs and she thought someone might be in the house. The dispatcher told her to lock her bedroom door, stay low, and stay on the line. She locked the door and crouched beside the bed. She heard nothing else. 15 minutes passed. 2 officers arrived. She heard them knock and announce themselves. She came downstairs. The officers cleared the house. Nothing. No one. They checked the windows, checked the doors. Front door was still chained. Back door was locked. One officer went back to the kitchen and stopped. He called to his partner. The window above the sink was open. Not cracked. Open. Pushed up from outside. The latch was up. The frame was wet inside. Water had run down the cabinet below it. There was a partial muddy footprint on the outer sill. The cabinet below the window, the one she had heard close, had a smear of mud on the inside of the door. Someone had come in through the window and had left when they heard her pick up the phone, through the same window, fast out the back. The officers walked the backyard with flashlights. The motion light did not trigger. They checked. The bulb had been removed, not burned out. Removed. It was sitting on the concrete step, placed there carefully. Think about what that means. Not broken, placed. The detective who followed up the next morning found something else. The Ring camera had footage from the front of the house, battery-powered, still running, from 11:50 that night. A figure walked past the front of the house slowly, stopped briefly at the edge of the frame, walked on. At 12:02, the same figure came back and turned toward the side of the house. That was 40 minutes before Claire heard the cabinet. The detective pulled the camera footage from Claire's neighbor across the street, a simple driveway camera, and found the same figure standing on the sidewalk in front of Claire's house on 3 separate nights across the previous 8 weeks. Always between 11 and 1, always during or just after rain. The window latch, the motion light bulb, the timing of the power-dependent back camera. The detective told Claire carefully that the evidence suggested someone had studied her house over time. The storm had not been an opportunity. It had been selected. The back camera going offline removed the only coverage of that window. The storm covered the sound of the approach and the entry. The removed bulb eliminated the motion light backup. The power outage eliminated any chance she had heard them coming earlier. The detective said they had a person of interest. They said that person had no confirmed connection to Claire, no prior relationship, no established motive. The case remained open. Claire moved out of that house within 2 weeks. She said the last thing the detective told her before she left was what she still thinks about. He said the window latch had been tested before. Not that night. On previous visits, whoever this was had found the weak point in her house long before the storm made it easy to use. She still does not know when they found it. She does not know how many times they stood outside that window before the night they finally came in. And the rain washed away most of the tracks in the backyard, but not the one inside the house on the cabinet door. That one stayed. These 3 stories are not unusual. The patterns in them, the sounds that get dismissed, the small signs that only connect later, the moments where help is close but not quite close enough. Those patterns show up again and again in accounts like these. The storm makes everything harder to read. It covers the things that should have been warning signs. It delays the response. It isolates. And by the time the sky clears and the evidence is visible, whatever was happening has already happened. If there is one thing all 3 of these people would say, it is this. The feeling that something was wrong came before the proof. It came early. And it was correct. If this kind of grounded, realistic horror is what you come here for, no supernatural elements, no monsters, just real human threat, subscribe to Nightfall Narratives. New stories posted twice a week. Trust what you notice, even when the storm gives you a reason not to.